Are you ready to jump into today's teaching? I'm excited, and I'll be honest, this is one of those passion project subjects, and so I might be like extra today, extra. I don't know. So you'll either love it, or you'll deal with it, or you'll say, batting average is okay, that was a weird one, but let's go from there. I want to tell you a story. A few years ago, I was in Columbus with a friend, and we went to watch the guys' basketball team from TVCS play in a tournament. And the game was on Saturday. And so we decided, we don't want to go up and down in one day, and let's just have some more time. So we went on Friday, the night before. The reality is, though, we could have handled the drive. We didn't care. We just wanted to create more space for more food options that aren't available around here. Places like Brio at Easton, yes, Jesus, Cheesecake Factory. This was before we had discovered Brassica. I don't know if it was even there. Anyone ever been to Brassica in the Easton Mall? It's worth a day trip, my friends. It is worth a day trip. And so we went to all the places. We ate our way through Friday. And before you start judging us, our plan was to go to Anytime Fitness the next morning, which was just a few doors down from our hotel. And listen, haters, that's exactly what we did. We got up the next morning, we hydrated, we got in the car, because who wants to walk the quarter mile when you're about to work out? We drove down to the gym, and to our surprise, something very bizarre met us there. At 9 a.m. on a Saturday morning, in Anytime Fitness, in an area with lots of tourists, not locals, the lot was completely full. Apparently, we weren't the only ones who wanted to work off our 1,000 calories of 10 p.m. cheesecake from the night before, but we were determined. And so we said, well, no big deal. Surely someone's going to come out. We'll circle the lot. We circle, and we arrive back in front of it for the second time, and again, the lot is full. And this time you're starting to get those thoughts creep in like, oh, Jesus, are you telling us these calories were free for the weekend? So we don't have to head that way. And before we circled a third time, we started to do that thing where you start to make a deal with the situation. You ever been there? You're like, this is a good thing, so I'll give it one more tip, God, but you're going to have to throw the fleece and give me a word or open up a parking spot so I can say, I went, I did it. And that's what we did. We made a deal. And it went something like this. Let's circle one more time. And if it's full, we can say we tried, and then we'll head to North Star Cafe and get ricotta pancakes and the spinach and cheese souffle and frittata right before the crowds arrive. And so with the deal in place, we circle slowly, and guess what happens? The lot is full again. And we say, well, we need to honor ourselves as being people of our word. And so we drive right on out of that parking lot. We beat the crowd, and we stuff ourselves with ricotta pancakes and a spinach and cheese frittata from North Star. And here was my point. That morning, we were ready to do the thing, right? We were ready to take care of our bodies. We were ready to do the hard thing. We showed up, but there was no space for us. There wasn't room. We tried to do the good thing. We tried to do the right thing. We tried to do the thing that people tell us you should do. Yet when we showed up, there was no room for us in the inn. And so what do? We circled a couple of times. We made a deal with our rational, logical selves. And then we left, having missed out on the benefit of the thing that we came to do. And sometimes, my friends, following Jesus, it be like that. Straight in the church as well. You show up sometimes with some things. And sometimes there's space for it, and sometimes there's not. It seems like in the church at times, not here because we're not like that, right? In the church, it seems like there are certain things we don't make room for. There's certain kinds of people we don't create spaces for, with certain kinds of complications and certain kinds of brokenness and certain kind of graves that, are different than our graves we were lifted up out of, because they're different. They're the badder graves, right? And there's certain kinds of questions and certain kinds of challenges. And instead of making room, we finesse the lots to create space for our comfort, but no margin for the things beyond our willingness. And every week, folks show up here and throughout churches in the valley and all across the world, really, and they're showing up with a question: is there space for me and my stuff with you? And too often, what they find is a deal they have to make with themselves as they circle the lot. And they say, I tried, apparently they don't want me. And there's likely some of you in the room today even who are hoping for something to change in your life. You're trying to come inside. You're trying to give Jesus a shot. You're trying to make sense of things and trying to connect and trying to heal. But for whatever reason, whether it's a you thing or whether it's an us thing or an experience thing, all you're really doing is circling the parking lot. And so, church, together, as we consider out of this text in Ephesians who we are as the church and what sort of temple, what sort of house God is fitting and growing together with Jesus as the cornerstone, can I share a burden that is on my heart that I hope is a burden that God puts on our hearts? And that is this, in which what is statistically speaking, one of the most spiritually open moments in American history, recent American history, particularly among younger millennials and downward, the people we want to reach, right? Our kids and grandkids and nieces and nephews, the people we're concerned that the world is leaving behind and is too bad for, like the people we want to reach, right? That are circling the lot with their questions. There are people leaving the church and dismissing God left and right. And it's not because that they've experienced for themselves that God isn't good, or because God didn't come through for them, or that God didn't meet them at their point of their need. It's because they have questions. Everyone say questions. They have questions that they don't feel safe asking. And we haven't created the kind of space that they need to show up in our lives with their questions. So I want to challenge us together as we lean into this today, that our love for God and people must lead us, not should, but must, because there's people in the mix. It must lead us to creating environments in our homes and in the church we are becoming together that should be the safest place on planet Earth to ask the very hard human questions of life. And in that way, like for your sake, for your kids' sake, for all the curious, for all the hurt, for all the doubting, for all the skeptical people circling the lot, maybe physically right now outside our building, maybe, I don't know, I can't see it, but certainly metaphorically, people circling the lots of this thing called the way of Jesus, church, Christians, purpose, all that sort of stuff. Let's become a home with parking spots open always and expanding to include space for doubt, for questions, for the difficult. And so I want to talk today about doubt and faith. All right? Doubt and faith. And here's a quick word to all the doubters here today. You're welcome here. Doubts and all. Bring it. We welcome it because our God is big enough. So let's talk about doubt and faith. I want to have the conversation in two parts: what doubt is and how to deal with it, and two, what faith is and how to cultivate it. And next week, this turned into a two-parter. We're going to talk about this really trendy, good, bad, unhealthy, healthy, curious idea of deconstruction. And then we're going to give some super practical steps in this journey through doubt and into faith. Before we get there next week, we have a mentor. And that mentor is a guy who Jesus created space for in his inner circle, in his innermost circle. That in modern history, looking backwards, we typecast as a bad doubter. But in reality, he dignified the journey that all of us go through at some point in our lives. And so Thomas, doubting Thomas, if you grew up with that, is going to be our mentor today. As we dive into Thomas's journey through doubt, I want to let us all in on something as well. In your life, number one, doubt is inevitable. I love that word, inevitable. How many syllables can you add to inevitable? Doubt is inevitable. Let me just tell you, if you haven't doubted yet, you've got a future date with doubt, and it's going to show up at your door knocking unwelcomed. You have a future around. It's a setup, and it is required. Doubt is in your future. Welcome to church. Doubt and skepticism and hurt and brokenness, they're coming your way if you haven't already worked through this. Look what happened to Thomas. John chapter 20, verse 24. Now Thomas, also known as Didymus, one of the 12, was not with the disciples when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him, "We have seen the Lord." Imagine it. I have such empathy for Thomas here. Have you ever found yourself in the complexity of who you are, full of faith and trust and excitement for God and all that Jesus stuff, and at the same time, massive reservations about it at the same time? You ever lived in that, what seems like opposing things, but really is the paradoxical nature of loving Jesus? I love Jesus and I trust him with my life, but I have massive questions at the same time, and I'm curious, am I wasting my life? Any of you ever gotten to that point? Everything is good and everything might be a total charade. Thomas was kind of in a moment you ever been in a church service where things are popping off? People are worshiping, praying, responding, and tears and weeping and reconciliation and all the things, and you're standing there what are they feeling? Because I don't feel none of that. There's faith in the room, and you're I just feel indigestion from the McDonald's biscuit I ate on the way here. I don't know what's happening. For those of you that have been there, Thomas missed out. And then the disciples said, we've seen the Lord. And Thomas oh, great, another example. Of course, the doubting guy, he misses out on the thing. Doubt is inevitable for everyone. When you've ever been in a place of doubt, it's not a great feeling at the start, right? It's kind of scary. Feels like you're on your own. Usually shame is coming down the hill right behind it as you kind of drill yourself out of it. And that's kind of where Thomas was. Doubt is inevitable. Well, why? Why do we doubt? Why are you saying to me on a sunny day before the school year starts, and I'm just looking for positiveness, that doubt has a date with your future if you haven't already gone through it? Well, there's a couple reasons why I think it's inevitable. And the first possibility of why doubt may be coming for yins is a simple faith. And before that sounds less condescending than it does on a screen, sometimes we have a very simple, naive faith. Now let me illustrate it to you this way. Have any of you ever flown in an airplane? Yes. You ever look at the wings and they're bouncing and you're are they about to fall off? That doesn't seem right. Are they designed to be bouncing? Well, the real answer is yes. They're meant to bounce. They're meant to be flexible. Why? Because if they were so structurally, they had no flexibility, and they had no bend, then when they got up to speed and in the air, what would they do? They break. They break. The air wouldn't flow the way it's designed to flow. The wings are designed to have a certain degree of flexibility and bend without breakage, without disconnecting itself from the hull. A simplistic approach to faith is no bend. And what happens? When doubt comes, faith does what? It breaks. A lot of times, especially in our area and probably in a lot of your stories in the past, is kind of a bumper sticker sized theology for who God is. That when confronted with reality and heartache and the things that you thought God promised you would never go through, what you are left with is not a natural response of doubt that invites you into more dependence on Jesus. It invites you into the breakage of a certain type of faith that isn't designed to withstand life. And sometimes we just have a simple, naive faith. It's not like a childlike faith. And, I'm talking not to you, other people, of course. Let's otherize this so we feel better about it. We have a childish faith. And one of the problems with that is that A simple, naive, childish faith, or an environment that's full of that, usually does what toward? What's its attitude towards doubt? It demonizes it. And it says, don't go through that journey. Slippery slope. Before you know it, you'll be on the other side of whatever tribe they've lined up with. And can I lovingly say, because I know there's many in the room that are kind of recovering from fundamentalist experiences, I'm just going to say it, that it is a fundamental flaw with fundamentalism. Because you would never hear a fundamentalist say, I could be wrong about that. I could be wrong about that. And can I tell you, welcome to Bridge Church, where we could be wrong about a lot. Why? Because we are trying to get so tuned in to Jesus and his way and not adopt a simple faith that doesn't leave room in the parking lot for the very human thing that is doubt. So simple faith, naive faith is one of the reasons. Here's another one. There's questions you can't answer. Any of you have questions you can't answer about God, about life? Welcome to the club. Welcome to following Jesus. There will always be questions we can't answer. When you look at Jesus in the Gospels, when people asked him questions, most of the time he responded with a question and not an answer. Why? There's something in that where he's trying to put our certainty on Jesus himself, not just on the data that we entertain and intellectualize. And for some of us, that kind of stinks, right? Kind of stinks. I don't want to be dependent on Jesus. I want to be dependent on my knowledge. And when doubt comes, I'll have this all squared away, and I'll tuck it away, and I'll compartmentalize it, and I'll wrap it up in a box, and I'll throw it in the closet, never to be discovered again, when all the while Jesus is saying, the doubt is an invitation to know me more deeply. Don't run from it. Come to me. There's just questions you and I can't answer. And there's another reason. There's just situations that seem unfair. Any of you have some situations in your life that were nowhere near fair? Yeah, every single one of you. The unexpected loss of someone. The things that happen to your kids. All the things, like right now, the fires that just killed at least 55 people in Hawaii. That's not fair. I got questions about that I can't answer. The nearly 200,000 displaced Ukrainian children right now in a war zone that they're unaccounted for. A decent amount of them have probably been trafficked into other nations for horrible things. I got questions, and I can't resolve that logically. I have questions. That naturally would bring some doubts. There's a fourth thing. There's just hurts that you and I can't resolve on our own. Things that happen to you, things that happen around you that can't be resolved and that brings doubts. There's millions of possibilities for why you might doubt and others might doubt. The question isn't if. I want to lovingly warn you, if you have yet to walk the journey through your doubt, you are either doing one of two things. You are doing internal gymnastics based in simplicity to just not go there, or it's coming for yins. And you have a date. Get dressed for the party and prepare your hearts. John Ortberg has this line that says, scratch the surface of any cynic and you will find a wounded idealist underneath. Love that. Doubt is inevitable. Plan accordingly. Here's the next big idea about doubt from Thomas. Number 2, you have to wrestle with your doubt. If and when it comes, you have to wrestle with it. Thomas, verse 25, said this, but he said to them, unless I see the nail marks in his hands and put my finger where the nails were and put my hand into his side, I will not believe. Thomas was doing what? He was wrestling with his doubt. He was circling the lot, looking for space without leaving the area. Quick idea. There's this term in sociology. I haven't nerded on a term for a while, but I wanted to today, and there's a reason. There's a term in sociology called spiritual bypassing, and it goes like this. Wow, God is so good. I don't need to worry about how I was raised as a child. I don't need to worry about my family of origin. It doesn't have any bearing on my future because God will fix everything. It also says, my faith can handle anything because I'm clinging to the promises of God on my side. There's 365 promises for courage in the Bible, and I got one for every day. So I don't need to deal with fill in the blank. Everything's going to be good. Standing on the promises of, it's spiritual bypassing. Doesn't mean his promises aren't real. Doesn't mean that that's kind of a clever thing to have a word for courage for every single day. But it also says, I have massive doubts that this whole Jesus thing might actually be a joke. But I keep showing up on Sunday, and I get something out of it, and so I'll just survive till next Sunday and leave them at bay. And let me just tell you, if that's kind of where you are in your journey with Jesus, that's fine for now. We will walk that with you. We want to walk that with you. But eventually, doubt is coming like an unwelcome guest in your life. And it might put you in the dark night of the soul. And there is no pep talk and no spiritual bypassing that will get you out of that reality. Eugene Peterson has this line. He says, the reason many of us do not ardently believe in the gospel, in other words, the reason the gospel isn't so pervasive in every aspect of our lives is that we have never given it a rigorous testing. We've never thrown our hard questions at it and faced it with our most prickly doubts. The journey through doubt to Jesus is hard, and it's real, and you must wrestle with it. And there is no road to spiritual maturity that doesn't walk straight through doubt. You have to wrestle with it. Final word on doubt. Number 3 is that everyone doubts, which means you're not alone. Everyone doubts. It's part of being human. It's not just a Christian thing. Everyone doubts. Some of the greatest scientists in all of human history, Christians or non-Christian, they came up with some of the most life-changing theories and ideas, always lived with a measure of doubt in their life. Some really famous ones that in their deathbeds were like, I know I'm famous for this idea, but I don't think it's real. Everyone wrestles with doubt. Let's be honest about it. Let's make space for it, and let's be vulnerable to the journey it brings. That's doubt. Let's turn our attention to faith. Everyone has doubt. Everyone doubts. Everybody say doubt. Everyone has faith. Say faith. Say it this way. Everyone is trusting something or someone. About 9 weeks ago this weekend, Eliza gave birth to Vivian. Vivian Reese. Took me a second. Is her middle name. Vivian Reese. And it's I just stood there doing nothing. I got no part in this game. I'm just in the room, encouraging. Am I allowed to say, as long as my wife is okay, I have to enjoy the birthing process. It is miraculous. It is insane to that is unique. It's wow. Yeah. So 9 weeks ago this weekend, she's giving birth to our daughter, Vivian. And I love my wife so much. I would do anything to protect her. I would do anything to help preserve her from things that could go wrong. And I need her in my life, and Sydney needs her, and Eleanor needs her, and Vivian needs her, and I would protect her. And every day I do my best to just try to understand her and the environments and the relationships she's part of. Not in a controlling way. It's just we're doing life together. I want to know what's going on and help her. And interesting, right? You would do anything to protect your spouse or someone you love. Yeah. And one of the most vulnerable moments a human can go through, the birthing process of our daughter, all that goes aside, and it is just a party of trust in total strangers. The anesthesiologist, who I've never met before, who the nurses tell me is about to retire, so I'm okay, is there a reason he's about to retire? Walks in with a 36-inch needle that's as thick as a gas pipe, and he's about to stick it in her back to paralyze her temporarily, but if he misses, we could have bigger things, and we're heading to the OR, and we're just chit-chatting while my wife is bent over in the middle of what do you call them, the things that push... Contraction. I was thinking convulsions. It's not convulsions. Contractions. And you can't really bend over when you're 9 months pregnant, but you have to arch your back or the needle will go into your liver. I don't know what happens. And so I'm standing there and we are literally chit-chatting about he's going camping at the end of the day and my wife is getting just a 3-foot-long needle stuck in her back. And for all I know, I don't know if he's good at his job. I've never seen his credentials. I don't know if he's using the right needle. He's training someone who's looked big-eyed over in the corner and, like, is this your first one? No, but like, and I'm just like, for all I know, you could have been a guy that bought the Halloween costume and stayed at Holiday Inn Express last night. And so, remember those commercials? That was a better joke than you, listen. And so, it's just an absolute party of trust with complete strangers. Yet, when it comes to God, we're like, give me the data. Make this certain for me. Doubt is a pathway towards trust, which is a pathway to faith, which is a pathway to relationship. Doubt is not the enemy. Doubt is an invitation. It's a portal. It is an opportunity. It's a door to step through. And depending on your experiences, my fear is that there are people in the room that have been circling the lot for years and you're still making a bargain with God and with the church. And all I want to say to you is pull in the parking spot because we got space for your doubt. We're not scared. It may be the single greatest invitation Jesus has ever put in your life. For most of us that grew up without the baggage of family stuff or crisis or struggles that just rock our world, we get rocked by doubt because we've done this nice little cushy, comfortable circle through life that's based in simplicity, rooted in our circumstances, not in dependence on Jesus. And so doubt shows up in our life and it challenges everything we've ever known, and we're not prepared for it. And our children are watching. That's my favorite line. Your kids are watching. And the greatest gift you may have to offer them is to go through your stuff, so that you have something to offer them when they go through their stuff. What can you give that you were unwilling to go through? Your kids are asking questions in our classrooms, in the room, upstairs, in the yet-to-be scores of thousands of kids within a 10-mile radius heading into schools. This week, next week, they are coming with questions. They're circling the lots. Will we be the sort of people in our homes and in our church that create space for their questions? And does it just create space? We go through our stuff so there's something to offer them in the meantime. And you know what you might be able to say? Can I tell you? Let me tell you. John Ortberg has this line that like faith is just strategic uncertainty. I love that line. Faith is strategic uncertainty. Strategic uncertainty. Can I offer you a line to your kids' doubt, to your kids' question when they ask you? Are you ready for it? I don't know. But let's sit with it together. Let's journey in that question together. I don't know. I don't know we'll ever know. I don't know you're meant to know. But I know the question you're asking is an invitation from Jesus to know him more. And that, my friend, is the thing that's gotten me through life. Not answering all my questions. Doubt exists for me in the corner of every room I've ever occupied. But you know what else exists stronger than that? It's Jesus. And I can choose to focus my life on the doubts and the questions, or I can choose to focus my life on Jesus and the person. And sometimes those things never reconcile. But Jesus is stronger. He's more beautiful. He's transformed my life. He's healed my soul. He's made me who I am. He's healed me of my hurts and my wounds. And my identity is rooted in him when it used to be rooted in my intellectualism, in my doubts, in my skepticism, in my anger, in my anti-institutionalism. It used to be in all those things. But my honesty and my vulnerability and my allegiance to Jesus above everything made space for both of those. And they're not the enemy. They're an invitation. And every time doubt creeps up, it reminds me of who Jesus is and what he's done in my life. And there are moments that doubt is louder. It's louder. It's louder. There's going to be moments in your future when doubt is louder. But listen, get comfortable with strategic uncertainty and the only one that can handle it. And that's Jesus. I don't know. But let's journey together. A parking lot has room. Everyone doubts, and everyone has faith. And can I give you this word to parents as well? When doubt sets in, please don't panic. Please don't panic. It's an opportunity to process. Don't panic. Spouses, don't panic. Process. Don't panic. Don't panic. Jesus has worked through all these questions with literally billions of other Jesus followers. He's got it. He's got it. Your faith is not so much your own doing anyways. Your faith and your certainty, it's God's grace given to you. What is there to panic about? I understand the reaction. I understand the emotion of that. I get it. But listen, God's strength is revealed in my weakness. Maybe there's something to that. Maybe there's something about when you're at the end of your rope, there's Jesus. Maybe there's something to that right here. Doubt is not the enemy of your future. It is an invitation into deeper and deeper and deeper faith. Don't panic. If God is who you say and who we say we believe him to be, your kids, your spouse, your soul is in the safest, most certain position that they could ever be in, because they're searching for a God who longs to be found. And doubt is a way of adjusting. You remember the old school radios to find the different? It's a way of adjusting the frequency of your heart to tune into God. It's an invitation. The strongest faith isn't a faith that never doubts. The strongest faith is a faith that grows through doubts. Are you getting the point? Doubt is not your enemy. It is an invitation. It is your friend. It is a companion on the journey. And questions, if you walked in with shame around your questions don't make you bad. Can I tell you that? Your questions don't make you bad. Your questions are like nuggets on the trail to find Jesus, who longs to be found. And maybe, just maybe, in God's plan that's beyond our comprehension, he's the one laying that path out in front of you anyways, and he's playing a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing with you that is drawing you to himself through your doubt. George MacDonald has this great line that says, doubts are messengers of the living ones to the honest. Doubts are messengers of the living one to the honest. When you think about Thomas's example, when you think about this story, what if the unbelief of Thomas is a greater gift than the belief of the other disciples? What if the unbelief, what if in God's kindness, his inclusion of Thomas and his story and his journey is a greater gift to you than the kind of seemingly normal certainty of the other disciples? John the Baptizer doubted at one point. Thomas doubted. Jesus didn't doubt, but he had some questions for his father there towards the end. Like, are you serious? This is going to be brutal. He had some questions. Peter, who's the rock that the church was built on and had his denial and coming back to Jesus, has this line with his questions like, who do you say I am? He's like, you're the Son of God. Like, where else would we go? I have all kinds of questions, but you're the most strategic uncertainty that I can put in my life. Where else do we go? Doubts are messengers of the living ones to the honest. And when Thomas was honest about his doubt, check this out in verse 26. What was Jesus' response? A week later, his disciples were in the same place again, and Thomas was with them. Now pause. The guy that missed out on the thing, the guy that's carried a level of doubt and skepticism, a week later, where was he? With them. He showed up. He came back. He persisted. He searched. He chased. He kept going. And Jesus' response to his doubt was this, that though the doors were locked, Jesus came. Why were the doors locked? Because they were fearful. They had all kinds of doubts. Have I wasted my life? Are we going to be killed too? Are we going to be subject, they're locked, they're hiding, they're ruled by fear. And Jesus comes and he stood among them and he says, peace be with you. He doesn't say, I got your answers. I sent you an email, check your phone. I'm going to go on back up to heaven, but just read that at your leisure and internalize it. And I got a couple extra recommended resources and podcasts I'm going to send your way in a couple thousand years. Just tune into that. He says, peace be with you. His presence brought peace in the uncertainty of his doubt. And then he does the thing that only Jesus could have done. He said, let's connect all the dots, Thomas. I don't need to do this. I am Jesus. They saw it. The others have saw it. I've appeared other places. You're not the only one, but come on, here. Just put your finger here. See my hands. Stop doubting. Just stop doubting and believe. And Thomas, his soul comes alive and his eyes light up, and my Lord and my God. When Thomas was in a season of doubting, Jesus met him where he was, and he allowed him to feel the wounds in his flesh. In other words, Jesus gave him exactly what he needed. And it shows us that Jesus wasn't distant to Thomas in his doubts. What did Jesus do? He actually drew closer. And who was the one in the room that got to touch the physical wounds of the body that just walked through a locked door? Thomas. Can I tell you that Jesus might feel far from you in your doubts? But with Thomas as our guide here, he's not. I don't think he is. Don't think he is. You can reach out to him because he's reaching out to you. And your doubt today that maybe you've carried with shame and hiddenness and you've masked it behind a lot of things, can I say, come out of hiding into this space, because we're creating space for that, and it may be the single most important invitation God's ever given you. You have a date with doubt. Your kids have dates with doubts. Your spouses, your loved ones, anyone that you care about is wrestling with these things. So doubt is not the enemy of your faith. It is an invitation to deepen your faith. And I end with a story. The story is about a guy named Josh. Josh is a real person. This is a real story, and this is his picture, because he is a punk metal artist from Portland that grew up in Atlanta, that spent years, about 10, 15 years ago, touring all throughout the nation, performing at dive bars and fire breathing, and he was living life. And one night, God met him in his doubt on tour with his band after a concert while he was couch surfing in the suburban house of some very out-of-place concert goers from earlier in the night. And here's the story. So Josh is touring with his punk metal band, and he's somewhere in the Midwest. They're performing in a different dive bar in a different city each night. It's relentless. Night after night, drive your 15-passenger van to the bar, load in your stuff, do your show, load out, decide if you're going to spend money on a hotel. You're probably not, because you get $5 a day. And that $5 does good to buy peanut butter and bread that you can live off and sustain your life for weeks at a time. You quickly learn in that sort of environment that the back bench seats of 15-passenger vans that are now illegal but weren't then are kind of comfy, but not so comfy as you're driving all night with the most lucid band member careening the cavities of road throughout the cavernous hills of wherever you are in the cornfields of the Midwest. And as fun as luxurious as that sounds, it's kind of miserable. And so you learn how to adapt. You learn how to sleep. And again, you quickly discover on your $5 a day per diem that food is not going to be coming your way easily, and neither is sleep. So what you do is you learn the art of asking people that are very eager to continue the conversation at the end of the concert, can we sleep on your floor? And in that, you learn which floors to avoid. Floors like the overcrowded, roommate overloaded bachelor pad where food and space are likely in short supply. They might have video games, good attitudes, and the desire to stay up all night, but it's going to be smelly, messy. The Wi-Fi bill is not paid. There's no food in the cupboard, and you got to drive somewhere to Iowa the next morning. Instead of that, Josh says, when you're panhandling for a free floor to sleep on, you learn to prioritize the suburban family home. You look for the cool parents in the crowd who brought their kids' friends, the out-of-place looking 40-year-olds with band t-shirts on standing somewhere towards the back. The suburban family home is clean, and there's food there. The suburban family has clean sheets, a spare room or two, and an air conditioning. The suburban family has paid its internet bill, and it probably has a stocked pantry. And so on one particular night, the cool parents are in a conversation with Josh and his bandmates, and they invite them to come couch surf, sleep on the floor. And very politely, but masterfully, they knew what they were doing in searching them out. They take them up on the offer. And so as the family leads them up to the steps into the suburban family home, the mom and dad offer them a smiling tour. Here's the kitchen, here's the guest room, here's some couches, make yourself at home. We're going to head upstairs, the showers are here, and welcome yourself to the food in the fridge. And oh no, ma'am, thank you so much. You've done more than enough. We could never do that. The reality is you wait for them to go to bed before you start pilfering the things so you can find what you want. You eat your way through their pantry. But after the kitchen, the tour finished in the living room, where very prominently, near the corner of the room, real life experience, and this is directly across from the floral couch. Can you see it? Like the mid-1990s suburban family floral couch in the living room. Stood in the corner a giant golden harp. Looks something like that. It must have been 6 feet tall, he describes. A great golden column attached to a sliding arch affixed by these gossamer strings that caught the light all fancy. Enormous and imposing and alien, maybe the only real-life harp that group of musicians had ever seen. So Josh did what any one of us would ask. He goes, "What's with the harp?" In response, the parents light up with some secret knowledge as it's passing back and forth through their eyes, and they summon their teenage daughter to the room, and they say, "She plays." They could barely contain their pride. "Would you like to hear?" So Josh entertains their kindness and says yes, fully expecting the awkward thing afterwards of hearing that her musicianship was lacking, but they're giving us floor and we're about to raid their pantry, so summon the ability to fake our way through the mastery of her harp playing. But as he described it, something unexpected happened as she began to play. And it transformed his life and became a pivotal moment in his decades-long journey through doubt while trying to hold on to faith. As Josh describes it, she sits and she lifts her hands with a series of deft, elegant movements. And music issues forth from the harp, and it fills the suburban family home. Beautiful, ethereal, otherworldly music. And Josh, still sweaty and hungry from the show, just sat there, drawn in deeper and becoming more and more transfixed by the music. And it wasn't just a musicianship. Josh was a musician, and it wasn't even the giftedness per se. I mean, could you spot a harp prodigy even if it was right in front of you? Who plays the harp? It was that Josh knew. It was this. What transfixed him? What transformed him? It was this. It was that Josh knew what must have been the kind of lonely dedication necessary to actually get good at playing the harp. Because who plays the harp? He noticed the practiced precision with which she took from one string and then to another commanding melody from this ancient-looking golden monolith. There was truth in the harp, waiting to be summoned with only the flesh and bones of her fervent fingers. Truth that wouldn't emerge if he sat down, untrained, with no blood, sweat, and tears in the past, trying to rely on his musicianship to pluck out Mary Had a Little Lamb or something. He could do it, but it wouldn't sound what he was experiencing. The truth of the harp wouldn't simply pour out by wishing it so. No, only through the practiced dedication of the musician would its truth come forth and fill the walls, cascading up walls and crescendoing and cascading against its own frequencies in this suburban family home. His journey through doubt and towards Jesus started to come together in this moment. He sat there becoming more and more emotional to what he was hearing and the thing that was happening in his soul, because he knew this. If you want to play the harp, you have got to stick with it. Even and especially when the journey gets tough and when you feel lonely and when you start to wonder if it's worth it at all. Who plays the harp? The truth emerging from those strings struck a chord in his soul that set him free to realize that his doubt wasn't an obstacle working against his faith. It was a door, a gateway, a portal, an invitation into faith. He knew that he just needed to keep showing up. And he, in that room 15 years ago in a suburban family home somewhere in Iowa, he thinks, experience the same invitation that Jesus has on offer to each and every one of us today. And it's this: if you want to follow Jesus, hear me, if you want to follow Jesus, you have got to stick with it. Even and especially when the journey gets tough with doubt, and when you feel lonely, and when you start to wonder if it's worth it at all. Why? Because truth will spring forth. Uncertainty will become okay as you get to know Jesus. If you came in today doubting this whole thing, I say keep showing up, bring your doubts, and let them bring you deeper into the truth of Jesus. If you came in arguing with God, keep arguing with God. Keep arguing. He's not offended. He welcomes the conversation. He's big enough. He can handle it. Keep circling the lot. And church, if you're not in that space today, let's make space for the grace we've already received. Let's make space for doubt in our homes, on our teams, in these rooms, in these environments, in our lives, and in this church, so that we are a home that is the safest place on earth for people to bring their doubt to a God that is playing music in their soul that they've yet to tune into. Keep circling the lot. Let's build bigger parking lots, more open parking lots. Let's create space as a family with Jesus as the cornerstone so that people can bring who they actually are to a God who is wanting to meet them there. And the truth of Jesus in our lives won't pour out just by wishing it would. The truth of what's real can fill your soul as you show up to the journey and even the invitation to faith that is through your doubt. If you want to follow Jesus, you have got to stick with it, even and especially when the journey gets tough with doubt and when you feel lonely and when you start to wonder if it's worth it at all. Faith might just be to hear the music of the future in the present. So would you stand? For just a couple more minutes, we want to create space for it. I know your stomachs are gurgling, you're curious about the kids. I know you got stuff on. But you may not have these 10 minutes, 5 minutes the rest of the week. So let's lean into it. Because if you want to follow Jesus, you got to stick with it. I remember being at a dinner table about 8 years ago with some friends, and questions were brought up that began to unravel some at the table. And it was alarming. It was difficult. And it was a moment in my own journey that didn't send me like in a tailspin or a crisis of faith, but it was definitely like, man, I say this is like my whole life, but this may really just be at the surface. And I don't want pain and suffering to enter my life as a way to get me there. But these doubts that at first were like, oh gosh, fear, shame, am I wrong? They made way for like the sort of heart transformation that I hadn't experienced previously. And so you might be in a similar place today. And so I would just invite you to connect our body and our whole person to this moment and adopt our posture of prayer and openness, feet on the ground, hands open to the Spirit, where we say, we breathe in, we breathe out, and we say, come Holy Spirit. And we invite him, not where he hasn't been, but by saying that we're tuning our hearts to the things that he may whisper and he may bring to your conscious. The feelings, the images, the things that he may give you. And so today, there's a lot of stories that walked in the room, a lot of experiences of doubt, a lot of struggles along the way. And if you came in today and you walked in with the thought that this is the last time I'm showing up. I've been circling the lot for years. Some of you may be at that point. We're like, I'm going to give this one more shot. And then I'm making a deal with God that says, I tried. Maybe this is the exact moment that you begin to hear God's invitation to come feel the scars, to come meet Jesus, to find hope in the mystery, to find certainty in the uncertainty. And so if you came today and this was like, this is the last shot, maybe the invitation of the Spirit is like, I see you, step inside, find freedom from the things that have kept you down, buried in your sin and shame and in the grave. For others, you're like, I don't know that I want to press into this conversation. What is working for me is working just fine. May I lovingly say, you can listen to Mary Had a Little Lamb. You go for it. But there's something more. There's something more. There's something more. And the way to that more may be through the things that you don't want to go through and think through. Then there's others in the room, this is the last thing I want to name, that you are so hung up in your head with God that you haven't felt anything for years. You create a really bad sense of, I have to have this thing squared away. It has to make perfect sense to me. I understand that. Man, I've walked that journey. But can I lovingly tell you that there is no certainty that you can muster for yourself that is more certain than a relationship fueled by trust in Jesus. Whether it's ego or pride or hurt or bad experiences that are holding you back, and the Spirit can heal you of that. And so Jesus, as we respond and we name these things, each person is bringing something to this conversation. Would you heal us from our doubts, remove the shame, not heal us from our doubts. Would you make our journey of doubt healing for our soul, transform our lives? And for the harp that's been ignored, that's in the corner of our soul, would you begin to play it with such beauty that we are transfixed by the beauty of who you are? We don't know how the harp works. We don't know what we're hearing, but we know it's only you, Jesus. So may Thomas be our guide. May Thomas be our mentor to discovering you through doubt and healing us of the shame that we've carried this far. So let's sing together and just give space for what the Spirit might do for the next few minutes. Jesus.